The verdict that divided America. The trial of a famous governor. Prologue. Courthouses in Washington always smell the same. Old stone, fresh coffee, the metallic tang of security scanners, and the dust from folders carried in lawyers' hands. You catch that scent even in the corridors, before you ever step into the courtroom. But that morning, when the trial of the former governor, charged with abuse of power and political coercion, began, the air was different, felt thicker, heavier. I had been working as a court reporter for over 20 years. I'd seen drug cartels collapse, politicians plead their cases before juries, businessmen buying time with clever legal maneuvers. But this time, I felt as though history itself leaned over us so heavily that even the judge looked small under its weight. When the defendant entered the room, silence stood at attention like a soldier. Tall, gray at the temples, dark suit, a smile that looked more like armor than a greeting. Around him, his team of lawyers, each holding a folder as though inside it lay not just their client's fate but their own careers. Outside, megaphones roared. Some shouted, "No one is above the law." Others answered, "This is political persecution." America, as always, was split into two camps. I imagined even the concrete walls of the courthouse vibrating with the clash. In my notebook, I wrote 2 words, "begun," and "nobody trusts anybody." I knew they would become the soundtrack of this trial. Chapter 1. A room without clocks. In the federal courthouse on First Street, there are no clocks. Time is measured differently there. In how many minutes the prosecutor reads the indictment, how many times jurors glance at each other, how long the pause lasts after an uncomfortable question. That day the prosecutor spoke at length, his voice sharp as a blade against stone. Abuse of power, pressure on subordinates, violation of oath. Each word landed like a brick on the jurors' shoulders. In the front row sat an older man in just a shirt, no jacket. His hands trembled as he scribbled notes. One of the jurors. On his face was fear. Could he tell where truth ended and lawyerly theater began? The defendant sat motionless. His gaze drifted across the courtroom as if searching for someone he knew. His lawyers leaned toward him. He nodded, but said little. Only once did he raise his eyes and meet mine. I quickly looked down at my notebook, but felt he had marked me in memory. The judge sat beneath the seal of the United States, gavel in hand. His voice was steady, but in every phrase you could hear it. He wasn't just presiding, he was keeping the country from slipping into chaos. "Please maintain order," he repeated, sounding less like a request and more like an incantation. Chapter 2. Corridor Wars. Outside the courtroom doors, a different logic ruled. In the corridors, journalists, lawyers, activists turned every word into a weapon. The prosecutor's press secretary handed out folders of key facts. Dates, numbers, phone call logs. It all looked simple on paper. Just steps away, the defense press secretary displayed very different documents. Memos and letters suggesting the governor acted fully within his powers. "This isn't about justice, it's about politics," he repeated. Eyes locked on cameras. Dozens of microphones clung to every syllable. In the corner of the corridor stood an elderly woman with a sign reading, "I want the truth." She didn't shout or argue, just stood there. I asked her why. "My son served in the National Guard," she said. "He told me he fought for a country where the law is the same for everyone. I came to see if that's true." Her words stuck in me like a needle. I realized then, this trial wasn't just about the governor. It was about everyone who once believed America was a place where even the mighty must answer for their actions. When the defendant was let out during recess, dozens of phones shot up like a forest of antennas. He passed me and muttered to a guard, "Don't let go of the thread." I didn't know what he meant. An argument for the defense? His legacy? His supporters' faith? But I wrote it down. Those words would echo later. Chapter 3. Hesitant Witnesses. The first witness was a former staffer from the governor's office. All eyes were on him. He could confirm the central charge. That pressure on local officials had been real. He began confidently, but his voice thinned with each question. Yes, there were calls, he said. Yes, there were requests. But when the defense asked, were they orders? He froze, fumbling for glasses he wasn't wearing. I can't say for sure, he finally admitted. A murmur rippled through the room. For the prosecution, it was like losing footing. For the defense, a breath of fresh air. Two young male jurors exchanged glances. One woman jotted notes. Everyone sensed this trial wouldn't hinge on numbers and documents, but on pauses and trembling voices. When the witness finished, the defense attorney rose. Her voice was cold, scalpel sharp. You said pressure. Please explain exactly what you meant. Well, it was a feeling. A feeling? She repeated, and quiet laughter spread. I felt how a single word could shift the air. And I knew the intrigue was only beginning. Chapter 4. Ink-stained papers. On day 2, prosecutors stacked mountains of documents before the jury. They looked like ordinary folders but carried a heavier scent of power, of closed-door decisions. Here, the prosecutor said, holding up a letter. Instructions from the governor's office to local officials. The tone, the phrasing, even the commas show this was an order, not a request. The defense jumped. Objection. Bureaucratic language, nothing more. Every administration speaks this way. The judge sighed, allowed them to continue. I stared at those papers and thought, ink always hides more than words. When you read such documents, you hear the voice, feel the weight of the desk they were signed on. But could the jurors sense that? Or would they see only lifeless paragraphs? In the gallery sat that same woman from the corridor, the soldier's mother. She stared at the papers as if trying to read her own fate between the lines. Chapter 5. Jurors under a microscope. I'd long since learned to watch not just the accused, but the jurors. They are the true protagonists of any trial, though nameless. One young black juror in sneakers spun a pen in his hands constantly. His eyes flicked between prosecutor and defense, always with suspicion. He trusted no one. A woman in her 60s with a retro hairstyle filled page after page of notes, underlining words, order, feeling, responsibility. She seemed to treat the trial like a sermon, each word a seed, waiting to separate wheat from chaff. Another juror, tall and gray-haired, sat like stone. He barely moved, wrote nothing, didn't nod. But when witnesses faltered, I caught the subtle clench of his jaw. I thought, these 12 people are the mirror of the country itself, divided, wary, uncertain. And their verdict wouldn't just decide one man's future but millions' faith in justice. Chapter 6. Voices from the street. While dry phrases filled the courtroom, drama raged outside. Hundreds gathered near the courthouse, some waving flags, others holding signs, freedom above all, or corruption has no party. During recess, I stepped into the crowd. Someone handed out coffee to activists. Others streamed live on YouTube. A woman in a red jacket shouted into a megaphone, "We won't let them trample the Constitution." A man in a baseball cap shot back, "And we won't let you use it as a weapon." It was an endless duel. Everyone knew the verdict wouldn't end the fight. It would only ignite the next round. I jotted in my notebook, "The governor's trial is America's mirror. In it, everyone sees their own reflection." Chapter 7. A crack in the wall. The biggest twist came suddenly. A middle-aged man, the governor's former advisor, took the stand. Known for loyalty, no one expected surprises. But within minutes, cracks appeared. Did the governor instruct you to pressure mayors into favorable decisions? He said it was necessary for the greater good. But was it an order? He held his breath. Yes. That word dropped like a stone in water. The defense erupted with objections. On cross, they attacked him, his memory, motives, even his health. But the crack had formed. I looked at the defendant. His face was stone, but his right hand trembled against the table. In my notebook, the wall is crumbling, but will it fall? Chapter 8. Cold cross-examinations. After the explosive testimony, the room's air changed. Everyone waited for the defense to strike back. They did cold hard. The lead attorney, eyes like ice, stepped up. You said it was an order. Do you recall the exact words? He said, do it the way we need it. We? Who exactly? The administration. And you're sure he meant illegal pressure? The witness faltered. His hands trembled again, voice breaking. The attorney pressed like a general. Didn't you receive promotions under him? Weren't you lined up for a state contract after he left office? Aren't you now trying to look like a hero to save your own name? A few jurors bowed their heads, weighing truth or theatrics. For the first time, I saw the defendant's shoulders ease. His eyes lit up, belief flickered back. Chapter 9. Silence before the storm. Days dragged on. Papers, witnesses, objections. Yet a strange silence settled mid-trial. Everyone knew the decisive moment had come and gone. Now we just awaited the storm. Jurors became stone-like, no longer reacting to each detail, only watching as the canvas filled in. I watched the defendant. Sometimes he whispered to his lawyers, but mostly sat in silence. Not despairing silence, stubborn silence, clinging to hope. Outside, crowds swelled. Police blocked streets to prevent clashes. Reporters camped outside like settlers. America seemed frozen, awaiting the final strike. Chapter 10. The last word. When closing arguments began, the air itself grew heavier. The prosecutor spoke first, words like hammer blows. No one is above the law. If we allow officials to wield power as a weapon, we betray the Constitution. He pointed to jurors, to documents, to witnesses. His voice boomed like a church bell. The defense painted another picture. Conspiracies, political vendettas, court as battleground. My client is not a criminal. He is a politician. And it is for politics, not crime, that he is judged here, the attorney declared. Then the defendant himself rose. He held a sheet of paper but spoke without it. I dedicated my life to this country. I may have erred as all humans do, but I never acted against America. I defended her, sometimes harshly, but always sincerely. His voice cracked, eyes glistened, and in that moment I realized the jurors saw more than documents. They saw a man fighting for his name. Epilogue. Verdict. The day of the verdict drew the largest crowds yet. Cameras, banners, hymns, prayers. America held its breath. Jurors filed back after long deliberations, their faces weary, resolute. The judge asked, "Have you reached a verdict?" "Yes, Your Honor." When the word guilty rang out, an invisible lightning bolt split the room. Someone sobbed. Others shouted, "Justice!" The lawyers lowered their heads. The defendant closed his eyes. I thought, this trial was never just about one man. It was about America once again trying to look in the mirror. And the question lingered, did we recognize ourselves in the reflection? Stepping outside, the crowd roared. Yet behind it all came another sound, the soft flutter of the flag in the wind. And I felt it was the Constitution itself reminding us. It lives as long as we are willing to defend it.
Subscribe to the channel. Share this video. Give it a like.